was a fool to trust to hope. There is no such thing as paradise, and no escape from the sins of our forebears. Hello and welcome to Liam's Lyceum. I'm your host, Liam, aka Himbar, and today I'll be doing a spoiler-free review of 2023's Book of Blades, Volume 2. Book of Blades, Volume 2 is like a Book of Blades, the first one, Volume 1, which I reviewed, I think, last year, maybe? Which is that it's presented by Rogues in the House podcast. It is an anthology of hot sword and sorcery stories, and in this case, there's art by Gilead interspaced throughout, which I believe it was all at the end in the first volume. So I liked having it, just kind of spread throughout this time. So let's get into the stories by order. We'll talk about each one very briefly, and then we'll talk about, just some general thoughts after that. So The White Tower by Charles Clarke starts this here, and Turkale returns, though you could start here with the stories, don't worry. He has an arm with a crystal skull in the end. It's mysterious, but good for smashing. The story starts with him fighting giants. It's cosmic and elephantine and overtly science fantasy, with nods to Tower the Elephant by Robert Howard. We have The Wolves of Winter Road by T.A. Marketon. Two mercenaries travel a suspect road, particularly for the superstitious. Things turn odd when they find a friendly woman and, deadly things afterwards. And not just from the snow. It builds up a creepiness to an interesting climax and a somewhat predictable but fine ending. That involves wolves, surprisingly, right? Anyways, the third story is Breaching Earth's Wombs, by S.E. Lindbergh, told in the first person from a nurse, the sister of Lady Ember. We get pregnant women and ant-headed gore to begin. It's gruesome and, and there's often a very, normal erotic sense to a lot of Lindbergh stories. This is actually the only one really in this volume that I didn't really enjoy. It doesn't really work for me. Sad to say it, some will like it for sure. It definitely feels grounded and earthy things at time. It definitely has some ideas that I would seem to be alchemical. But I'll keep on reading Lindbergh stories, and I await one that I will really enjoy. But anyways, the next one is Beasts of Waste and Desolation by Scott Odin, a tale of Grimnir the Skraylinger. He is in Jutland, traveling to meet some kin, and I'm not sure on the time period, but it seems rather early. Spear and Shield Danes are mentioned in Sjaland, but Jutes and Angles aren't mentioned in Jutland. I'm not sure what time it is, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's migration era. Stjolvater, or Stjolvater, I guess, if you're going with the older pronunciation, of the Ginnungagap comes in and plays a game in exchange for food, and this involves riddles, which is very cool, and Grimnir proves tough as Gristle, unsurprisingly, and is a very enjoyable story. I don't think you need to have read the Grimnir stories to enjoy it, but it's nice to be able to read the character again. Goat Against the City God by Bryn Hammond is a story of goatskin, which actually I recently reviewed the novella Waste Flowers, which is another story of goatskin. This has a super gripping start. I really like this idea of a play being put on about a past adventure that she happens to witness. It doesn't really continue with this play thing. It's not like a odd framing narrative, but this involves the city gods of Fatimbet, which is annoyed by goatskin, or who is annoyed by goatskin. It's rather short, but it's a great one. And then we have The Toe of Pergendu by Jason Ray Carney. Ozaprix is the last of his order, working to keep a rift beneath a city at bay. He has two companions, Wolfnir, a breechcloth-wearing barbarian, and Spittledrum, a familiar that looks rather odd. They seek an old rotten toe from a long-dead sleepomancer to solve their problems. They face some challenging foes on the quest. It's a very absurd and whimsical, quirky even, but also nice and gothic, and I guess you could sum it up as weird, and I think Carney is really good for this style here. The next story is Ceremony by Z.S. Reynolds. Katea, I'm not sure how to say her name, is a hostage for a ritual. She is far from home looking for her sister. A very simple story with some S&S spirit. Not my favorite of the batch. Again, just very simple. Cries from a Sleeping City by Matthew John is next. The war is over, which means bad business for the mercenary Lochmannen. He needs work to pay for transport away from Spatha. And it vaguely goes in that direction, but turns dark and deadly, as you kind of expect. And success is measured in small amounts sometimes, though. That's an important lesson, I feel like, for this one. It's brutal. It doesn't quite start into full action. Has some setup, but I think it's still a good example of, short story form storytelling. So anyways, Something Oath-like by Oliver Brackenbury is next. Again, another really short one. I think I actually read a beta version of this or something because it was awfully familiar feeling, but I don't think it was published anywhere else. But Enmed is a thief, but he comes not to this tomb to steal, but for something more personal. Vo pursues, but this relationship isn't so simple as, good versus bad. And Vo is a character that appears in many stories, I believe, by Brackenbury. I believe that is what the novel is, or some writing novel. But it's a very short one. A nice character moment that focuses on Enmed rather than on Vo, but is there for both. And the next story is The Geomancer's Son by J. Thomas Howard. It's a Patera Knight story of Raoul, I'm not sure, and his mount, Amlia. In this time joined by the odd featured Azelle and Enchantress. It's pretty much far future, story of Jurassic Park had happened and we lost completely against the dinosaurs. But far future still, after some things had happened, right? It's out of this world story, involves a certain gargantuan tower that I'm a big fan of, and Howard showcases some good use of language as well. And What the Desert Blows In by J.M. Clark is next. Within Worry the Rat, autocorrected her name, so Worry the Rat, has lost her stash of cash, and her lover Layla has seemingly stolen it. She needs to pay, a certain payment, and curses a lot because, she lost her money. And she and her thieving partner go to get some money, but experience horror that is blown in by a sandstorm. It's nice and short, with horror and character really well done. The Oculus Key by Kirk A. Johnson is the next one. This one is also in Johnson's collection of the Obanax and other stories of heroes and horrors, which I've recently reviewed. This one is actually maybe my favorite from that collection, so it's nice to have here. It refers to Ki, a moon, particularly splendorous on the night Sangara seeks his freedom after losing his last fight earlier in the day. He charges into a cosmic event that's grotesque and turns bloody, and our barbarian hero spits in the face of deceit and adversity, and it definitely has a lovely cosmic horror element to it. Return of the Quill by John R. Foltz is next, before last story, I believe. And this was published twice before, actually, so I guess it's a good one. And Bar was once the Golden City, now it's rotting and plague-ridden. A necromancer, one of the 8 sorcerers that have ruled for 100 years, is beneath the city looking for a ghost he fancies when he's supposed to be finding more corpses to turn into law enforcers. The story involves rebels and history, leans more towards the second S in Sword and Sorcery, but some surprising redemption there too. A neat tale for sure, and Foltz seems to pretty much always satisfy with his tales. And the last story is A Horror from the Stars by Steve Dilks. It was actually previously published in the first volume of Swords and Sorceries, Tales of Heroic Fantasy. This is an alternate version, apparently. Bohun is newly arrived in Ibn Shak to do business with the Sultan, whom has his wife in his harem. It's very Conan-esque, sans, I guess, plus in this case, the more personal connection of husband and wife. But it's pretty much good old Blood and Thunder, which I'm feeling a little worn out over right now. It is well done, and like I said, it has this added element that makes it a little more interesting, I think, but didn't stand out particularly to me. But I think if you're a fan of Blood and Thunder, I don't see why it wouldn't be a favorite of yours. I'm a fan of Blood and Thunder. I just, I've read it a lot. Anyways, I think like the first volume of these stories of Blades. Anyways, it showcases a variety that you can get in Sword and Sorcery, right? Something like the Bohun story, for example, all the way to Jason Riccardi's story, very different types of Sword and Sorcery, but both Sword and Sorcery. I wish in some sense it could be more varied. I think we're working on it in the genre, and I think Sword and Sorcery fans should be happy with this, and those that aren't familiar with the genre could enjoy most of the stories too, with the right expectations. I'm not sure if a Volume 3 is in the works, or a Sorcerer's Companion, maybe, right? A book of, sorcery or something, is forthcoming from Rogues in the House, but I appreciate the continuing of the genre, and the various authors in this volume are a good showcasing. They are good showcasing. I enjoyed my time reading this. Not terribly long either. So, anyways, if there is another one, I definitely look forward to reading it. And bravo to the authors in here for entertaining me. So, anyways, Liam from Liam's Lyceum. I'll catch you next time.